Gerald Bitok is our guest. He is the Director of Public Communications at State House. He joins us now. Let's look at 1 year and what's been happening in the country. Karibu sana, Gerald.
Sana, thank you. Good to see you once again. And I still remain the biggest fan of the show, of course. And I still appreciate the discussions that go on. As a member of a journalism club and as one of your own, I appreciate the journey that we've come as a media and how much value we've been able to give the citizens. So I celebrate every progress that the media makes, and this is one of those progress in terms of building conversations that shape the direction of this nation. So I still remain your number one fan. I've not faltered. I've not regressed. I still remain the biggest subscriber of this evangelism. So happy to be back again.
Unaona vile watu wanajua pledge loyalty.
So and as I pledge loyalty, I hope you also playing loyalty.
Even ndio watu ukiingia State House. City, please welcome Gerald with the day's proverb. Yes. Tell him which country these ones are from.
You know, this week. Stop referring to him as Gerald. This is Brother Gerald.
Oh, okay. Hallelujah.
Oh, yes.
Brother Gerald.
Yes. If you want to be civic about it, call him Comrade General.
Yes. You.
Gerald.
You're heading in the right direction.
Our proverbs come from the country of Kenya. It's a country known to many. It's on the East African coast. 2 watermelons cannot be held under one arm.
2 watermelons cannot be held under one arm.
Gerald, before you got here, we got into a little story about watermelons. Eric has many friends. Among Eric's many friends, there's a friend of his who went into watermelon farming, and I'll leave the story just there, and add that he's no longer in watermelon farming. Okay.
Is it because he couldn't hold all the watermelons?
You got it.
Hiyo ukulima ilikunywa maji.
Drank water.
Brother Tito, pole sana. Pole sana.
What's your interpretation of this proverb?
But I don't know. But of course, you've talked about the business that Brother Tito started, and I think we need to pray for Brother Tito as a community of the brethren. So the next time you try something else, maybe other melons, they might actually work. But I think I don't know if I'm being a bit philosophical. I would want to imagine that melons are big. You know, they're big. At least the melons that we know. They're different melons. They're smaller melons. But the watermelons that we speak about are huge. They're huge fruits. So at one single time, you can use your 2 arms comfortably to hold one melon. If you are to get 2 melons, then clearly you cannot have them under the same arm. So these all look at it in a way that you cannot be a jack of all trades. Maybe you need to handle one melon at a time, one business at a time, one function at a time, so that you're able to deliver effectively on what you're doing. But that's what I would look at it. I could be a bit philosophical and deep, but I think that what it would be. You cannot juggle 2 melons in there with one arm. Yeah.
Carry the load that suits you, what you can actually carry and deliver. What do you
I
say?
was also reading another proverb. Now that I'm sitting close to city, seems the wisdom of the proverbs is seeping into me. There's an interesting proverb that I read, I think a couple of days ago, about India. You know, Indians love food. The culture of India is food, especially on the streets. If you go to India, you find they're selling this and that. The biggest culture of consumption is chai, which is tea. And someone said, it was a politician, that the average tea man on the streets knows our government should run, except how to make their tea.
I don't think Gerald's still talking about India.
I'm still in India. I want to clarify that I'm still in India.
The average Mama Chai knows how to run the government, except how to make their tea.
Yes, thank you.
Sawa.
What do you understand, City?
No.
My friend.
Do you think Kenya Kwanza is holding one melon at a time?
It depends on
the size of the melon.
It depends not only on the size of the melon, but also the number of the hands. Yeah.
How many hands does Kenya Kwanza have?
I think, first of all, one of the things that I would want to start off with, to follow up on my proverb, is that I don't think we give Kenyans enough credit. Because we are a country, when you speak about Kenya, Kenya is not a person. it's a cumulative activity and existence of all of us that we live in this country. And a lot of time I think we don't give Kenyans enough credit for what they do. Remember, this is a country that does not have oil, does not have gold, does not have diamonds, does not have silver, does not have copper, does not have any natural resources. The only resource we rely on as a country is the people of Kenya who work so hard. From the farmer back in the village, the trader who runs a kiosk, to the mamamboga in the streets, to the chai man that I just spoke about, to every single person that builds up the economy that Kenya is. This is a country that doesn't have a natural resource, doesn't have gold, doesn't have diamonds, but we still run. We run because we have a resource that's called the citizens, patriotic citizens of Kenya, who work so hard and contribute to the cake that we can sit here and discuss and ask if Kenya Kwanza is handling the right melons or handling a melon at a time. So I want to give credit Kenyans this morning that they work so hard. I appreciate them personally at a personal level, even before I talk about the office. I appreciate Kenyans, what they do. If Kenyans were not as committed, as hardworking as they are, trust me, we would not be having a nation. So this is a country that we must pay homage to the citizens of this country. We must appreciate their patriotism, their drive to wake up every single morning and try. You wake up at 4 a.m. You find Kenyans trucking going all the way to Indasolera to work. So credit to Kenyans who are doing this country proud and ensuring that we're able to run as a nation every single day. Whether Kenya Kwanza is handling a melon at a time, is a bit relative because it depends also now in terms of government delivery. How do you structure and how do you bring together a melon? What do you call a melon? And some of the flagship things that the melons that the government Kenya Kwanza have been talking about probably has been around housing. Talk about healthcare, talk about social security, all the manners that ensure that the nation that we have that coexists as it is able to progress forward. So if the question should be, is Kenya Kwanza handling their melons right? I'll say they are doing it.
Maybe let's define the melons. Okay, and let's just be fair, right? So looking back into the 1 year, 2023, okay, even beginning the end of last year, when the administration came into office and set up its structures of government, the new things that we've seen so far include the Hustler Fund.
Yes.
Okay. We have seen the introduction of the revamped housing program. It was there before, but now there is a revamped housing program where we are all contributing to it through tax. Then we have also seen the launch of the universal health coverage in the last 1 year. There was the agriculture subsidy program and the support to farmers, and we have to hear the progress that's been made so far. Those are the balls that are that the president, the administration has thrown up in the air. They are up in the air, they are doing whatever they are doing, spinning. They'll come back down. How are they doing up there?
First of all, I think before we get the last time I was here, we were discussing the cost of living. And the month just after we got into power now, I think it was my first week in office. As when I came here, I interacted with you. The biggest conversation at that time was the politics of Ugali. You can remember they were discussing actually what space does Ugali have in the Kenyan economy, and at what point do we have a discussion about the cost of living around Ugali and around Unga, for instance. We remember the biggest debate here was the cost of Unga. People are saying, we cannot have a conversation around the bigger things if we cannot fix the smaller things like the cost of Unga and the cost of Ugali. Credit to government, and I want to say this, that I have no doubt whatsoever that the president, His Excellency President William Ruto, knows where he wants to take this country. He has stuck to his plan, the manifesto that he set out, including those melons that you mentioned that he wants to structure his delivery around. But the biggest story that I want to set as a base before I get to the melons is the cost of living conversation. If you have observed the transition of the political conversations on the political landscape as it is now, they have completely moved from the cost of Ugali. Now you're talking about rather grand issues. When I came here the last time I was here, we were discussing subsidizing consumption, subsidizing the price of Unga. And the biggest conversation from the citizens that I saw here, they were raining blows on me, were like, you cannot tell us anything else until you reduce the cost of Unga. As we speak today, the president was very categorical that he was not going to subsidize consumption. And he said, I'm going to move to subsidize production. That's about the subsidized fertilizer and all that. As we speak today, the conversation, the national conversation has shifted completely from Ugali politics and the cost of Unga to grander issues. Now, that's a credit. That's a first milestone that we can speak about. That for the first time in this country, within the 1 year of Kenya Kwanza government, we are no longer discussing Ugali. We have moved to bigger conversations.
Wait. Okay.
So
the cost of ugali, sufurias on the head are not public spectacles anymore.
When did you last see people wearing sufurias?
Okay.
My brother.
Does that mean that the cost of living has come down?
Now,
I mean, are those
the
two
discussion
related?
is, and that is where I'm going to, because the narratives that we are forced to have at that time was that we must center the cost of living around the cost of Ugali and Ugali politics. I was here with you, my brother Eric Latif. And now, the same conversation has been, we cannot center the cost of living conversation around the cost of Unga and Ugali. It means the conversation is changing. We have moved completely from the politics of Ugali and the cost of Unga. Now we can discuss the cost of living from a bigger spectrum. Now, when we talk about the cost of living, of course, it's not only Unga. And that has been my argument, that we cannot reduce the national conversation into the cost of Ugali. There are many other staple food. Our sister here, of course, might not be the best fan of Ugali, but she's still a Kenyan. She lives here. She can discuss rice. She can discuss jollof rice. She can discuss the other vegetables that we have, the okra. I mean, we cannot reduce a national conversation into the politics of Ugali. So the fact that now we are all agreeing on both sides that, yes, we cannot center our cost of living conversation around the cost of Ugali is progress in itself. And it's an elevation of a conversation. Now we are discussing bigger things like the cost of dollar. The other day we had a press, you're talking about the cost of fuel, international metrics that measure the cost of living. So what I'm saying is, finally we are shifting the conversation from the politics of Ugali that we had when we got into this, when the administration joined in, and now we are discussing better things. Is the cost of Ugali come down? Yes, it has come down.
Are we shifting the conversation because it's no longer of importance?
Because we already have Ugali now.
I'm of the view, sure, but at the prices whereby it's affordable for everybody.
It is.
Because I'm of the view that the staple of a country, if the staple of a country is not that one that you look anywhere and you'll be able to find that even the most vulnerable, the poorest of the poor can afford it, the staple of the country, then one would argue that the government has no business doing anything else but to ensure that the prices of that staple are that cheap, or rather, I'm not going to say cheap, are that affordable.
Because cheap is relative.
Exactly. It doesn't matter where you go, that when the very staple is attacked, you will find people on the street. It doesn't matter if you're as hoity-toity as France, or if you're somewhere in, when the cost of rice in Vietnam goes through the roof, people are in the street. When the cost of bread, because of the cost of wheat and its production, goes high in France, tractors are in the streets of Paris.
Yes.
So are we saying that it is not a national conversation anymore because it has now become so affordable as a staple that Kenyans now are bothered with graduated things?
Yes, the reality is, and I think, this is not a spin. Like, see, we had mentioned that about the spins. It's not a spin. If you move around the country, you realize that this production, you can attribute it to anything else. But the fact that we are very deliberate about, the president was very deliberate about subsidizing production fertilizer. The truth is the cost of Unga has come down over the months. So is a staple affordable? Because affordable is also relative, but is it available? Is it accessible at a price that we can all agree that we can have it as a food? I mean, people cannot go hungry. Yes, it is. There's enough maize production where I come from. I've been moving around. There's enough maize production. Other countries as well. There's production as in Okambane. People actually doing top dressing in Okambane. So, I mean, when we speak about, you can attribute to other factors. Of course, we cannot say the magic has happened because only we give fertilizer. But there are other things that we have favorable climate conditions and all that. But the bigger conversation is, what exactly were we subsidizing? Subsidizing production. If we had focused on subsidizing the cost of Unga, we'd still be stuck. You not be having the production we talk about. The cost of production on food production is extremely expensive. Last year, I think a year ago, we were talking about 7,500 for a bag of fertilizer. Today, we are speaking about 2,500 as a cost of production for as a cost for a bag of fertilizer. So we can speak about anything else. We can talk about all these things. But if we cannot narrow our conversations around government intervention in ensuring that we can provide and we can produce cheaply, then that conversation cannot end where it deserves. So yes, we have better production of food now. The cost of Unga has gone down over the months and it's witnessed. You can go to the supermarkets, you can go to your shops. It's the food, the staple that Ndu is talking about is accessible and affordable. As much as affordable as well is relative. What's affordable to Eric might not be for me. But the fact that we have enough food is something that we should celebrate.
Is this data that's supported by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, that the costs of basic commodities has come down?
It depends on what you call basic. We were speaking about unga, for
What
instance.
the National Bureau of Statistics considers basic are those basics. There is the unga, the items that you go to buy.
Oil, sugar.
Food items, basically. Has the cost of food items come down according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics? And by how much? Is it come down to a level that you can say, okay, we have at least addressed a significant portion of that very strong challenge, and now we can focus on bringing down other costs?
I want to ask you, I want to flip the same question to you. What is the crisis in terms of food consumption? What is the crisis? Where do you see the crisis?
Cost of basic food items.
What is the crisis?
Cost of basic food items.
Okay. So what is the cost that is in contention? Because, I mean, we would argue, and we've been in Kenya with you for a long time, and even other countries. At what point do we ever say that the cost of living is good enough? At what point, when it is how much, for instance?
Well, you asked what a crisis is. Well, crisis is when a situation where something is so difficult that it becomes almost unbearable, isn't it? And if you look at the majority of people at the time when things were at its height, or even now, then if the majority of people are not able to afford something, which is a basic commodity like what Eric is talking about, you're teetering on a crisis.
So, no, we are coming from a backdrop where a few months ago we were running around with relief food as a country. You saw that. We flagged us a lot of trucks from State House. You were seeing every other Kenyan was coming and saying, let's contribute food for other Kenyans who don't afford. We are coming from that backdrop. Now we're the backdrop whereby we are not having those relief foods being carried around because there's no food in the country. There's production that we can sufficiently say we are able to sustain ourselves as it is now. Is that not progress? It is.
Okay.
So
Eventually, you asked a question and perhaps we need to respond to it. Let me respond to it the way I see it. You see, you can't talk about cost of living without talking the availability of money. Enough money to be able to buy what you need, pay your taxes, pay your rent, pay school fees, all those things, the things that people want to do or aspire to do or have been doing. That's how it is we determine whether the cost of living is either up or down. When we can afford to do all these things, even in the most modest way, then we say we are managing. The cost of living is manageable. But when all these things and the things I've referred to are basic, when they're out of the reach of many people, then the cost of living definitely is very high because one cannot afford to actually survive because you can't eat. If you live in a town, you can't afford to pay your rent. You can't afford basic amenities. You as I said, the things that you consider fundamental to simply living. Now, the rural areas may be different. There's a question of employment that would then give you money, cash, liquidity. In the absence of liquidity, the story of cost of living again goes up because you're now not able to afford because you don't have the money. Now, the situation we find ourselves in has brought about a lot of unemployment. People don't have jobs. Now, if people don't have jobs, it means they also don't have money.
You're right. And I mean, that I think the president actually, in the last press briefing with the press, mentioned very well what you're actually bringing out. The economy of the well-being of the stomach and the economy of the pocket. You know? Sometimes you have two scenarios. You could be feeding, but you don't have money in your pockets. Now, let's talk about the melons. How many melons do you hold at a time? At least we fix the basic issue, which was food, and you think about production and something in production, probably progressively, because, and I think we need to be fair as well, that when we elected government, we didn't elect a government of magicians and black magicians. We elected human beings, we elected people who are going to work to plan progressively better things. We cannot expect that we're going to have all these melons ripe at the same time, like avocados. You only hope, you can pray that they get ripe at a different time. Otherwise, you have 10 avocados who are ripening at the same time. It means you are either crazy or you're not going to consume those avocados. So, talk about the melons, back to the melons, the economy of the basic things that we were discussing months ago. Last time I was here, the cost of unga, the politics of Ugali. At least now we can move and discuss that. Because I'm ready for that conversation. Progressively, it's going to get better. Employment, you're talking about the housing programs that we are hoping that is going to give employment to Kenyans. You cannot fix employment overnight.
Sawa.
You cannot.
We'll take a break. I'm going to read for you the latest data from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. This is at the end of November. The average retail prices of selected commodities in the last 1 month, and we're talking about the changes month on month between October 2023 and November 2023. Food items. Sukuma wiki dropped by 2.4%. The price of sukuma wiki, the price of maize grain, loose maize grain, dropped by 3.3%. The price of cabbages dropped by 3.6%. Maize flour dropped by 6.5% for 2 kilograms. Potatoes or kilogram dropped by 7.1%. On the other side, though, the price of onions rose by 1%. Beef with bones, 1.9% rise. Carrots rise by 2.7%. Wheat flour rising by 3.3%. Oranges rising by 3.8%. Tomatoes rising by 17.7%. On the non-food items, you have cooking gas going up by 1.1%. Diesel a litre going down by a percentage. Kerosene going down by 1%. 200 kilowatts of electricity going down by a percentage. So there's what's going up, what's going down.
Yeah.
Unga na sukuma wiki na cabbage has come down. Nyanya, vitunguu,
Gone up significantly.
machungwa, melon gone up
So
significantly.
this is data for November, right?
This is this is comparing October and November.
Good.
Data released at the end of November. Somebody is saying, Gerald, kuna shida moja ya njaa.
Njaa.
Ukishiba, you think everybody ameshiba. But let's move. You talked about employment.
Kabla hatujatoka hapo. Before we move from that, and I think sometimes we need to be sincere. And that's why, I'm not here to sound like a broken record, just trying to defend government because I'm in it. But I also want us to look at the facts in terms of food availability. I'm not saying that, I'm not running away from the reality that things are tough for Kenyans. That's a reality, it's there. But we cannot also run away from the progress that we are making, right? If we must move forward, then we must also appreciate the progress that we are making as a people and give credit where it's due, right? And I remember I had a fight with someone online, sometimes during the planting, the tree planting season. And someone came and asked, hey, na hii uchumi ya Ruto mnatoa wapi nguvu ya kupanda miti? This is someone, of course, who is okay. They have bundles, they are on call, they can make those comments on social media. And I simply asked, okay, how much? Because I wanted to have a very personal conversation with them. So I went to the inbox. I'm like, oh, bro, I want us to have a conversation, a very personal one. It's not about what we are doing, what I'm doing, what you're doing. But tell me, how much has changed since September 2022 and now? What has changed so drastically that you can actually ask where we're getting the strength to plant trees? What has changed in your life? What is that you had in September 2022 that you have lost so much to an extent that you can actually ask why and do as a manager to go and plant? I wanted to have a personal conversation with that person. But then again, it went down the drain as expected and became, insults you guys and all that. So we didn't have a constructive conversation. So the thing is, I appreciate where things are at this point. When you talk about the cost of other commodities, you've given us a good breakdown of the cost of things from not just Ugali, but talking about gas, talking about sukuma, talking about oranges and all that. We still contribute to what defines a dignified living for a human being. We cannot run away from the fact that you can maybe the cooking oil could be more expensive. You can have unga. Someone said, okay, sawa tuko na unga, lakini unataka tukule ugali bure bila mboga. But we can appreciate the progress that we are making with honesty and sincerity. So the person could not answer what had changed between September 2022 and where we are now. And many people cannot answer that question.
Many cannot answer.
Yes.
There are many who have lost jobs.
Of course. That's
Right.
we are not running away from
The
that.
Federation of Kenya Employers talked about those that it has had to lay off because they've lost jobs, because their companies are not able to actually produce. Those that are earning, very few will talk about a pay rise since September last year to December this year. But they'll tell you how much what they were earning last year was able to buy and what it's not able to buy this year. Okay? Because of the cost of commodities going up, because of cost of commodities locally that have been imported going up as a result of the weakening shilling and all, because also of taxation and new taxation measures. All right. So you still had the 30% income tax going. Now you add higher rates for NSSF, add higher rates for housing, add higher what percentage of your income is actually going into direct and indirect taxes? What percentage of that is more than 50%? Upwards of 60%. And are you getting better services? Are you saying that the needs that you had last year in September have reduced? You're still paying, if you're talking about just the basics. Rent, same. Food, you're buying more expensive. Fuel, it's more expensive. You're spending more per liter for the same amount of money. If you talk about school and school fees, you're spending more. You still have to think about where to get the school fees. If you're thinking about all those other things, you have to sort out your garbage. You have to sort out your security. You have to... The amount of things that require your shilling are the same. They require 1.5 shillings now than they required last year. But the shilling input has remained at the same, if not reduced. Companies are either cutting back on how much they're paying people or shutting down and people losing jobs altogether. So somebody can tell you how much has changed between last year and this year so drastically that your life has been affected. People can tell you.
So you've given us some numbers here, according to I think Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, on the price of food items. And on average, from what you've read to me, there seems to be a significant drop in most basic commodities. When you talk about cooking gas, for instance, you're comparing between the month of October and the month of November. Now let's go back to 1 year backwards. The cost of 13 kg cooking gas was in excess of 3,000 Kenya shillings. I mean, those are facts we can look at. Let's go looking at an article that was done in August 2023. I think by the Business Daily. And it was mapping the prices of cooking gas. So if we are comparing a drop of 1% between November and October, how much? And do you remember the first step that the president took when he came to office? He spoke very candidly about the price of cooking gas. And he took a measure to ensure that price was reduced. So if we look at the price of cooking gas, for instance, from last year to where we are this year, has it increased or it has decreased?
It has increased.
It has increased?
Yes.
By how much?
KNBS change over the last 1 year between November 2022 and November 2023, 13 kilograms of cooking gas, the price has gone up by 1%.
How much was it in 20?
It's gone up by 1%.
It was 3,000, and I think we can check that.
It's up by 1%, according to official government data.
Okay, so let me ask you, in 2022, the price of, according to also data that I can pick here, the price of 13 kg cooking gas was at 3,000. Let me check. I think I just saw something here. Was at 3,084. It came down to 2184. 3,000 to 2184. That is the prices in 2022 for 13 kgs and what we are purchasing now.
Right now, gas is 2184.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Where?
The government statistician has said that the price of cooking gas in November last year is 1% cheaper than the price of cooking gas in November this year. Sure, it can't be 3,000 to 2,000. That is not a rise.
I'm giving you...
if statistics show that it has gone up, it's gone up, Gerald.
Okay, fine. Let's assume it's gone up by 1%.
This is the job of these guys.
All right. Let's assume it's gone up by that 1%.
Yeah.
You've given us across of products, across range of products of the price changes that has happened for the last 1 year. On average, because you cannot speak about an economy where everything reduces. There's always the balance in terms of supply chain and demand. Amen. You cannot say that for us to say we have an affordable economy and the cost of living is good, everything has gone down.
Yes.
Unless we want also to ignore facts and ignore science of economics. Things they'll keep fluctuating. At what point you'll have Ugali going up, at a point you'll have Sukuma going up, at a point you'll have gas going up. It's a balance. So generally,
will go up because
it's raining.
So when you do an average,
because there's no drive.
I'm telling you, it's a balance. It's a balance of supply and demand. It's a supply and demand economy. It's not magic.
That's true.
So when you look across board on average, we can say that at least the cost of living has come down. In all honesty, If you could do those calculations on what given us, what has gone down 2.4%, 6.5% of unga has gone down. You talk about the price of unga going down by 6.5%, the price of skuma going down by 2.7%, and cooking gas going only up by 1%. So if you are going to balance, do the mathematics of average balancing in terms of the cost of living, we can argue and we can agree. We can agree to disagree that the cost of living has come down. If you look averagely at that.
Gerald,
But we cannot.
I want to change this
focus on
conversation
one. Yes.
just slightly. When did we have COVID in this country?
3 years ago.
I guess.
Yeah, 2019, end of 2019, 2020,
Yes.
in Kenya. March 2020 is when it started in Kenya.
It started.
In Kenya.
And when did it start going down?
Well, we were looking at kids went back to school in 2021, January. So you can say that's when it started going on the decline rather.
Okay. Now, when did the UDA government come into power?
September
2022, a year after that, a year and a half after that.
All right. What was the state of the economy that they found? You see, let me explain to you why I'm changing this conversation. Sometimes it is true, we may judge a government harshly. I'm going back to the point at which the country was at after COVID. The number of people who were unemployed, the actual state of the economy. And I'm asking myself the question, from that particular position, has the UDA government moved upwards and improved things? Are we exactly where we were at that particular point in time, or are things worse? I'm using it as a reference point because this government did not bring COVID, but the ravages of COVID was what greeted them when they came into power. Now, how has this government managed those ravages? That's the change of the conversation that I'm bringing in.
And that's exactly where I was. And I like your reference because you've given us a reference of situation. You've given us a situation that we are all moving.
It was the real situation that we had,
As it
and
was,
and
things
it was
were.
devastating.
Yeah, so when you speak about, and I think I've been in the media space. We've been having these conversations over time with this government and previous government. We've been having these conversations. I've been here. We've had these conversations. And we've always discussed the state of the nation. Even before Kenya Kwanza came in, we were discussing about the loss of jobs due to circumstances either outside the control of government or within the control of government. The conversation of job loss and the cost of living and the access to this and that has never been any different. We will be lying to each other. We say that the discussion that I had with you in July 20, or okay, let's spin it back to April 2022 is different from what we are talking about now. We are talking about job losses. It's about the state of the nation as it was. So the big question that City guys bring, and I like that angle, is that the state of things as they were outside governments, outside politics, in itself, we're already coming from a very disadvantaged position, where the private sector is being hit by the ravages of COVID-19 and the global economy that was having the challenge that it was having. So the question is, have we done better? Have we gone better? Are things getting better? If you ask me my own sincere opinion, yes, we are getting better. It's not going to be an overnight. And I think we need to accept that we cannot fix all these things overnight. Everybody is trying to get out of it. I was in China a couple of months ago. They're still trying so hard to come out of exactly what has happened 3 years ago. Even look at the way their yen is behaving. It tells you of a story that every nation globally is trying to recover from something. So yes, as a country, we cannot say we're in isolation, but we are getting better. I would say with a lot of confidence that we are getting better, and I would say that there is a direction that I know that this government is taking, that things are going to get better. But moving on from the cost of unga and the cost of sukuma and all that, you had told me about the other melons that we are having up there. One of those melons, of course, would be affordable housing that we're speaking about. And I was running around online yesterday, and I saw there's someone who did a feature in Mukuru Kwanza. We had the different stories, the contrast. Even Louis was talking about the traffic that is heading to Europe. So the reality is we have things that are changing. It could be slow, but things are moving. If you go to Mukuru Kwanza today, you'll find houses. That's the truth. There'll be other houses being built. And from what I watched, the article was done yesterday, not even an article, I mean the story was done yesterday. I like the balance in it. And people are appreciating that, yes, there's something going on here. We're actually seeing construction work going on. The interviewed, I think, was running a cafe, and I was like, we have customers every single time. Actually, people are coming to us, they're buying food, they're doing all that. people, the Juakali guys are like, yes, we are supplying these sites with metal and doors and all that.
Yeah.
But they are saying, well, we could be doing all this, but at the end of the day, who benefits from this project that we are talking about? And I think that is the bigger conversation, if you ask me, because the conversation on the temporary benefit at that point might not be very significant in the long run, because houses will be done. Construction. What happens to that mama was running the cafe there? What happens to those Juakali guys? What ownership do they get to benefit from this housing project? So maybe I'll just run you data of the housing projects that are ongoing right now. Just the numbers. Buxton, first one, I think is done with 584 units. Mombasa.
This is Mombasa.
So we have 5 ongoing legacy projects with a total of 9,447 affordable homes to be delivered.
To be delivered meaning?
I mean, at the end of
Under construction.
Under construction.
Okay. Yes. I mean, that is the projected
9,400 housing units
9,447.
under
housing
construction.
Units, yes.
Right.
Will come out. Talking about the ongoing Pangani housing, we're looking at 1,562. We have Nakuru 1,800. Bondeni, I think 605 units. Buxton Phase 2 in Mombasa, about 1,392. The projects that are being launched, we have 29 ongoing launch development projects that were begun within the administration. That is 15 already been launched by HE, and the 12 more projects that are going to be launched progressively as we continue now. There are even tenders that are being floated for affordable housing projects. In terms of the ripple effect of what goes on, because the impact is what matters as well. Before even we go to the acquiring of these houses, we are looking at over 2.5 billion that has been actually ring-fenced for the Juakali sector. The people are buying locally. The doors are being bought here. The windows are being bought here. So what you're looking at in terms of the ripple effect on the economy of the Juakali sector would be at an average of 2.5 billion. Direct jobs, over 43,000 direct jobs that is going to be created over time as we move this of course is going to expand. But I want to address a bigger conversation and concern that I saw yesterday on the allocation of these homes. First of all, one ID, one home. If City Moga is going to buy a home today, your ID is what identifies you. And actually Bomayango was a platform which I think you can go through it. Is now being linked to eCitizen. So it means that all your details, including your KRA and all that, is linked to your acquisition of a home. So there's no single time, first of all, there's going to have one person who is owning multiple affordable housing schemes. That has been the concern for the citizenry. We are talking about the social housing schemes that we are talking about Europe, that Ndu was talking about. It's about the upgrade of those areas that we are seeing that has been mapped as slum areas. First of all, there is no way Gerald Bitok is going to move from Kitengela, or I'm going to move from Lavington, I'm going to move from Mayakiwe, then I go to Mukuru Kwanjenga to go and purchase a unit.
Why?
There is a mapping and enumeration of the residents of that area first. People who live, then it's an ongoing process. We must understand that if you want to buy a home in Mukuru Njenga, for instance, do you live in Mukuru Kwanjenga? Have you been living in Mukuru Kwanjenga? If you're going to apply to purchase a home there, those checks has to be done to ensure that you actually deserve to get a housing scheme, a social housing scheme within the Mukuru slum. So I added yesterday, someone was saying that yes, you could be building all these homes, but what stops politicians, what stops from people of means from coming in and buying all these homes, and then they still rent it back to us. So the Ministry of Housing is running an enumeration program that takes up all the data of the people living within that area setup. Group Wanjenga, whether Kibra, because we are also having social housing in Kibra, to ensure that any person who seeks to purchase a property within that area actually comes and lives
How are we
in that area.
verifying that list will actually only consist of people who live in that area?
I think we all live somewhere. I mean, it depends. You also look at ID. When you're applying for ID, you're told go and take it to your local chief to confirm that you come from that area. I mean, we all live within a community. We all have the programs under Nyumbakumi and all that. There's always a way that you can identify that this person actually lives there. If I go to Mukuru today, these guys will pick me out. I cannot go and pretend in Mukuru that I actually live in Mukuru. I must explain, where do I live? Someone can actually can second or can actually verify that I live within that neighborhood. So what that does is it buffers and protects the units from abuse, and ensure that every other person as well has access, has a fair access to affordable housing. You don't have Latif having 15 houses He has some in Pangani. He has others in Kibra. He has others in he has become a landlord of sorts. He has others in Kilgoris. So that ensures that the affordable housing programs goes to the right people. And also, if you're getting it fairly. You're not getting it against the chance of another person to get the affordable housing. So unless there's any question on that.
The assumption here is that the price point is going to match the incomes of the intended community.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yes, exactly.
Is it?
Is
it going to match? Because you see, if you put up houses in Mukuru and you say only the people in Mukuru would qualify to purchase these houses, but the entry point is 3,000 shillings, you've basically put in a barrier that says that they will not afford to buy those houses.
We get back to the conversation that we had earlier about, if we sit here, if someone comes in with an item and places it on the table, our purchasing power could be different. But we still have a chance to own this property. Yeah. The social housing problem they talk about, even these rent-to-own structures that you're talking about. Actually, these people who live in those areas can get access to this, and they can have a deposit of 10% if they want, and they can get to live in these places as they pay up slowly. Installments are as low as you mentioned. I know that could be. I don't want to sound prejudiced to say that maybe 3,000 or 2,000 could be low. Or because it could be high for someone else. But we're ensuring that we can have at least an average rate that ensures that it can give everybody a fair chance to own a home. Because we cannot also, these are actually homes being constructed by another person's taxes. We are collecting money from do to build these houses. So we just giving everybody a fair chance to own a home. Right? And giving you flexible payment plans that you can use to actually ensure that you have a home in these areas.
I think the question, Gerald, is whether all these ducks are in a row. Okay? So by the time the housing units are ready, the community is ready to offtake the houses. There's a plan, yes. There's money that's been given to the developer. The developer will finish. The government, through the housing fund, will buy the houses and pay off the developer to go. And then the community will have to come into benefit. If you go through the Boma Yangu platform, the Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company, all these are structures that are supposed to help. Is the community in Mukuru, for example, right now linking to their SACCO? Is their SACCO participating in the Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company? Because if it was, then it's possible for them to get the sub 10% mortgage for a long time through KMRC. But if those things are not happening in the community, if you're not putting in the community structures that will verify that this is a resident of Mukuru and therefore they indeed qualify, then this whole thing will be a flop.
For structures where they're already involved.
Yes.
So there's, first of all, when you talk about, we're talking about the identification. Physical, the identification should be physical. Yeah, we have to come to you. And we
Which
see
means you need to have, by now, already the Nyumba Kumi structures should be aware that they will be playing a key role, because Nyumba Kumi are the ones who will tell you this is a resident, this is not a resident.
Yes. So the identification will be physical. As it is, there's a program by the Ministry of Housing to do the enumeration and create a database of residents in those areas. Under the scheme of, have you mentioned about the financing partnerships to encourage more mortgage uptake is available for where you feel, if it's a SACCO, your SACCO can help you raise your 10% or your deposit, the better. If you can find a scheme, because there's always financial partners who are willing to come on board.
That's what I'm saying.
Right
Now, if you are telling me that the groups in this target communities that are already being made aware of the options, that are already getting into these streams, so that when the houses are ready, buyers are ready, I'd be happy. But Gerard,
so that is information. And also, there's something I want to make to clarify.
Time in Maisha. We'll do it again next time. We'll do it again next time. But thank you very much for joining us.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.